And he said, absolutely, because I love talking to these people, particularly since I was born right here in South Carolina. He's advised a long line of Democratic presidential candidates, including George McGovern in '72, Jimmy Carter in '76, and a lot of people say he's responsible for his election in '76. And in 1980, he also advised him. He advised Gary Hart in '84, Joe Biden in '88, Jerry Brown in '92. Then, as he puts it, at some point, the Democratic Party left him. He didn't leave the Democratic Party. He, by the way, one of the things he frequently says is that there's two political parties, and only two. There's the corrupt party and there's the dumb party. I'm stealing his lines. He's going to probably... the corrupt party and the stupid party, sorry. He's a top political analyst for Fox News, expert in public opinion, and he's finally reached the pinnacle of his success. He is a visiting professor at the Citadel. Pat Caddell.
Yes, and I'm teaching with Mallory. You can imagine what fun it is. He does not have as many of his humorisms as he does here, which is something I always look forward to. It puts a special spice on the whole thing. Look, I'm going to talk about a couple. This is very sudden. I want to talk about a couple of things. I have an article up, Politico put it up, the Doug Show and I wrote yesterday, which is called America's Loss of Trust, the Crisis, America's Loss of Trust. And it is about how Americans distrust the entire political process, how both parties have been damaged severely in the political class by what has happened with the shutdown and with Obamacare and how it's getting worse and what that means, portends politically. And I've been working on a special project, which I've shared privately because we're still developing it with our class on Thursday, which was quite a shocker. And it's about just how far this country is willing to go. The politics you know, the politics you discuss is irrelevant to the politics in the country. What is coming is a storm, and how it comes and whether it's successful, we will see. But one of the things that obviously prompted this was, within the last weeks, has been Obamacare. And I have a little different take, and it always strikes me that the opponents, who I think made a disastrous mistake with their defunding strategy rather than a pinpointed strategy at delay and at the IRS, and particularly the issue that you hear from no one, which shows you how much in bed both political parties are, the congressional exemption, which turns out, which for Congress, notice how John Boehner, the same man who has thrown the game with Benghazi and the IRS, and his, in fact, the fact that he is still Speaker is a testimony to the hypocrisy of the Republican caucus, in my opinion. Because if you cared about your country, we would get at the truth of Benghazi rather than preserving his speakership. But when Harry Reid got ticked off and released until he was told to stop it, released the emails after John Boehner, his fallback position was, we were against congressional exemption, except for the emails explaining to Harry Reid how they were for it. And notice, not a single person running for president or thinking of running for president has thought to make this a major issue. The absolute discrediting of both political parties in the service of their own needs and ambitions for their congressional staffs and themselves. For those of you who don't know, we subsidize the Congress not to be on Obamacare, and they get handsome subsidies while everyone else gets thrown off their health care. But it is hypocrisy. And when I polled it, it is unbelievable. 2/3 of the American people believe that was a reason to vote them all out immediately. But you would think someone would speak of this, right? Not in the environment in which the parties do what they do. And it gets me now to my real point and concern, which goes to my friend Tommy McQueenie's point about illegal procedures and rules. What is terrifying me is, and I wrote a piece a week ago, or 10 days ago, from Fox News. I dictated it actually coming out of class. I was so mad to Fox News when we left class, which I described as the about after the nuclear option, which is the rule of law has now been replaced by yes, we can, which is about how we destroy 225 years of precedent. Look, I was against when the Republicans, led by Mitch McConnell in 2005, wanted to have a nuclear option because I thought it was a degradation of the constitutional process. And so, unfortunately, some Republican senators stood up. Now we have Harry Reid doing it overnight. And by the way, Mitch McConnell's response, or as you know, as I refer to him as the Ambrose Burnside, the worst Civil War general of American politics, response was, oh, this is a distraction from Obamacare. Really? Really? No. This is the continual slippery slope that sadly begins under George W. Bush with the Medicare Part D, holding the boat open illegally for 8 hours to push through a deal that he had made with the drug companies that the president had, where we had no competition for the agencies and whatever, which was a totally partisan bill, followed by Obamacare. But now as the slippery slope gets worse, we have this, which is it's okay, and I'll tell you the 2 points. One on Obamacare, which is frightening to me. It's not just the president said you could keep your health care plan if you liked it and you could keep your doctor. It was known from the beginning, but no one really points out enough, is that that bill could never have passed. If anyone had known what they knew was in the bill, it couldn't have been passed, and to the eternal shame of the Republicans and Romney, the man could never have been reelected. But the Republican Party goes through these idiot exercises of, oh, we're going to vote for repeal, rather than going for the jugular. And I've said this and written this for 2 years. But what's really behind it, which is most bothersome, and you don't hear this complaint, because the Republicans in Congress and in Washington, the lobbyists, are all part of the same game in my mind, which is the contempt. The subtext of the defense of Obamacare is, you people are too stupid to know what's good for you. We know what's best for you, and we have a right to lie to you to accomplish what is good, and you people take it because it'll be good for you. I have yet to hear that out of the mouth of any Republicans, because that's the same way they act when they're in power, and that's why the country is against both of them. But when we come to the rule of law, remember what we saw with the nuclear option, which is really frightening. A president who follows George Bush in deciding, I have presidential rights to signing statements that say I don't have to obey part of the law if I don't like it. And Dick Cheney announcing the presidency has bizarre war powers never intended or ever claimed by any other president. So now you get Barack Obama, who takes it 10,000 feet further, which is I ignore the law when I choose, I change the law when I choose, I appoint people that I have no business appointing, and then I overthrow the law. We're turning the United States into, and it is a bipartisan effort, because I have listened to Republicans and conservatives, including Charles Krauthammer, for God's sake, saying, well, you know what, when the Republicans get the Senate back, not that the stupid party will ever do that, but when they do, we will exercise the same thing and they'll regret it. No, the country and the Constitution come first. And that is what is missing from our politics. The idea of rule of law is not something you choose to look at when you decide whether or not you're in power or not. And that is what is missing from the political debate. And I thought Tommy summed up, you know, in football, there are limits. We are destroying not only the nuclear option, that stuff. Look, there are even questions about whether the numbers for the unemployment figures were rigged. We heard a criminal here, who I'm associating with tonight, a climate criminal here, which is about these people who just basically think, all of them do, that they can disregard the law as long as they have the votes. And it is both parties, and this country needs to return to what it believes in, which is a real people's government and a constitutional government, and that the rule of law is supreme. For God's sakes, what is happening, this slippery slope is going to destroy us all as it keeps up. Thank you.
First of all, your remarks are amazing, but how did you time it to end exactly as the bell?
Never happened before.
I mean, wow, that's a television pro. Questions? We got time for a couple questions. 2 questions down there. Can we go over there? We'll take both of them.
Why doesn't the media do something and tell us the truth?
Well, because the media, let me just say, I've said this before, because the media is not challenged where they need to be challenged. There's a lot of ways to make, Republicans get up against conservatives and whine. I made an argument a year ago, caused a sensation on YouTube, well, for me anyway, when I got up and attacked it, not as a basis, I didn't care about the partisanship, cared about the fact the press's job is to protect the people from government and from power. And they have abdicated that in the service of becoming outriders, and, well, I have other words I could use, which I won't in public, to service one political party or the other. The problem is that why should the media cover it if the narrative doesn't include? When you have an opposition, as lame as this opposition is to this president and Congress, where they have no narratives, whether it be on Obamacare, whether it be on Benghazi or whatever, why do you think the press is going to do it? The only way is when people decide to challenge the press, and Tommy and I had some conversation, something we need to revisit, which is there really needs to be an effort to hold them all without regard to partisanship to the standard I said, which is that we have an implicit agreement in the Constitution, the First Amendment. That implicit deal, the founders did not like the press. They hated the press, and particularly in those days. They thought it was necessary to have a free government. And the deal was, we will give you freedom of the press in return for which you will protect the people from government and from power. And that has been abrogated. They have deserted the walls. They have, as I said a year ago, made themselves, by that choice, enemies of the American people. And it is at that level that you need to raise this, not whining and crying.
Pat, you raise a couple of excellent points. I know before President Obama was even elected, or no, after he was elected, and the proposal was put in front of us that we had to pass Obamacare, despite the fact that we didn't need to read it. It was an imperative. It was so vital just to check out what was in it. I reached out to as many organizations and peers that I knew.
Need a question.
Pardon me?
I need your question.
Question. Asking many people, why should we trust a program that is good enough for the dumb people, but not good enough for the people passing the law? As you
Well,
have
why don't
pointed
you
out,
ask them? Because they are the ones taking advantage. You know what I'm tired of? I am tired of people in the Congress saying, oh, it's like Benghazi. 177, I think, is the number. Members of the Republican caucus have signed a discharge petition, demanded a special committee, select committee on Benghazi. Those people are being fraudulent when they say, I signed it, but Boehner won't do it. Well, if you could shut the government down because 80 members of your caucus demanded it, when 177, three-quarters demanded it, you should tell Boehner, you either do it or you're gone. But they don't, because it's an exercise in kabuki theater, just as it is on this issue with Obamacare. There are too many people, and I won't name them by name, who are in bed with the insurance industry on Obamacare, including the insurance industry. I mean, it's just, the fact of the matter is what no one has said. That bill never could have passed, never would have passed, if anyone had known what it did to private insurance, to individual markets, and to doctors and employers. The president could only do that, and the failure to challenge that is why it's law and why it stays law.
What time is your show?
Yes, Political Insiders, you can watch. We were the biggest show on Fox 2 weeks ago on Sunday night. When I say that without a lot of publicity, we do it at 7:25 or 7:30. We're on Doug Schoen, John Labudier. We actually won for Fox. We were the biggest rated show of the day, of that hour, and our show was a great part of that. And we have a lot of fans among people who matter in this country because we tell politics, just like you heard me tell it, without fear or favor. And that's what we're known for.
And a website?
Oh, well, soon I will actually have a website. But we have one for politicalinsiders.com. You can go to Fox News and get it. And I will soon be up doing it myself, including tweeting, which will be about the end of the world.